So where I would like to start, Jacqueline, is what are some of your earliest experiences that have shaped your career and kind of made you the leader that you are today?
I started out in professional services and, one of the largest accounting firms in Australia and globally. And the slogan at the time was put yourself in your customer's shoes. We had notebooks with it written at the bottom, and it was all about what is impacting your customer. And so how do you approach it with empathy, be pragmatic and what have you. So I've taken that on aboard a lot throughout my career. There was a lot of structure though, enormous infrastructure at a professional services firm. But I learned so much there and very grateful for my time. And it's really shaped how I see scaling, setting up best practice processes in the way that you tackle and solve problems. So definitely did help me out in a process, even the formalities, simple things as being prepared before a meeting, being aligned with your team and all coming together before speaking with a customer. And people may think that can be overkill, but being well prepared before a customer meeting. We had meetings for meetings. And I know that sounds like, well, why would you have so many meetings? But we were always very well prepared for customers, always thought about how that would impact them. And so definitely something I continue to take on. And from a leadership perspective, it wasn't, I was in the assurance practice, so I was in audit, and really it was high pressure. I had multiple stakeholders and a large portfolio of different customers. So on any given day, a different customer would ring you with a problem to solve, and you'd have different people that you'd have to work with. So it's, again, being able to project manage, keep different people informed of progress, and that time management of how do you prioritize and meet the expectations of your various clients, but also managing their expectations. And then from a leadership point of view, it wasn't until I moved and seconded to the PwC Foundation, which is the charity arm of PwC, where I truly learnt what it was like to be an empathetic leader. I was just do, go, go in audit, and it really wasn't until I was put in a position where I was new to the team and there were some natural disasters that occurred, and the team was looking at me. It was my first week in the role, and I was like, oh, look at me. What do you do in these situations? And to be vulnerable and work through it together and build confidence in those that are like, no, you're meant to tell us. I'm like, no, you are the expert. It's okay. What have you learned? And let's work through it together. That's where, in terms of leadership style and that aha moment, the light bulb really went off. On.
Yeah, awesome. I know in Big Four, it's like a bit of a baptism of fire, right?
Mm.
As you know, in my background was recruiting a lot from that space, and you would see folks that, yeah, it's like training wheels, but like on steroids. And then you either stay there and you go down, like you climb the ladder and you go partner,
Yes.
or you usually either join a client, right, or you see the world outside of that. You have everything that you've learned, and you want to kind of be on the other side. What was the motivation for you to make the move from consulting, and what did you do next?
I always wanted to be part of a team where I was having impact on an organisation. And I love to know things inside out. I just have to know how it all works and fits together. And so jumping and hopping around different customers throughout my portfolio, and I was very, very fortunate that I landed in technology from the outset. So I was in the tech, entertainment and media sector. But then also had some retail and chemical, biotechs, all sorts of wonderful customers. So I got to see I got to experience and have a quick look within businesses throughout many different industries, but I knew I really wanted to be embedded within one and working alongside a consistent team towards a common goal. And that's what really made me yearn for that move. I did have wonderful opportunities, though, in professional services with a 2-year secondment in London, again, at some enormous enterprise customers. And I was part of the corporate audit and part of implementing Sarbanes-Oxley at the time. And so the exposure there was enormous. So I got to see lots of small, scrappy startups all the way to enterprise customers. And wow, they were vastly different. And I was very fortunate that I knew that I wanted to go into an Australian listed company, given all my listed experience as well through my portfolio. And I just happened, honestly, a recruiter rang me regarding REA, and it just ticked all the boxes. And at the time, REA wasn't that well known. Everyone just knew it as realestate.com.au. So, they had to explain REA, and they said it was REA spent a lot of money making sure everyone knew who REA was. And I was just very fortunate to go through the process and land at REA and had an amazing almost 7 years there.
What was it like? Did it fulfill your expectations moving out of the consulting space?
It most definitely did. But at first, when I first joined, they had just there were some changes within the team, and it was like, here's your laptop. Maybe sit here and can you prepare a set of financial statements ahead of the auditor starting in the next 4 weeks? And then we're going to market super early. And I'm like, where do I find everything? They're like, searching there. And but what the beauty was in the journey throughout REA was you had to be resilient. You had to be resourceful within yourself because, there was no one to onboard me. It was, what did I know? Where do I start? And just give it a go. And you'd expect maybe a larger listed organization at the time, maybe that would have more infrastructure, but it had grown fast. And the back end hadn't caught up. And don't get me wrong, it was still, governance was great, solid. It was no issues in that respect, but I saw a complete transformation from when I joined and there was 100 people in at head office to then thousands of people and had continued to expand. And it was just a brilliant time to be there.
I think, would you say that some people, when they make that kind of transition, you're talking about your previous roles where you had a lot of process and set up and organizational support and that kind of thing around you, and then you move to a company where it's much more chaotic, maybe is the word. I don't know how you describe it, but I don't know. It seems like from what I've seen, sometimes people struggle with that transition when you move that kind of culture. Do you see that kind of same thing? And how did you approach, any challenges that you picked up while you were trying to make that change?
Yeah, most definitely in all my role changes and all different experiences, you stand back and go, okay, what are the processes? Where are the gaps in all of this? And how do I make things more efficient for everyone and get everyone on board? And how do I bring everyone on the journey? And, when I first joined REA, people didn't appreciate my timeline. That was this massive A3 piece of paper with lots of different delivery points and line items, but it became embedded within our process. But it was I worked with all teams to understand, well, how long does it take you through a month-end process or a year-end process? And how can we then all fit together and make this a seamless flow of information to achieve our deadline? And I don't know, Dan. It's really just how I'm built. I'm like, how do I make this easier and make sure everyone's aligned? And so I tend to take the reins and try and create a program. And that's how I did it in at the beginning there, and was able to sort of build on those processes and frameworks as the business grew. But, and then someone else who's had a experience at a larger organization then can come in and then build on that and transform it for the future. But for that time that I was there, I took what I had learnt at PwC with that structure and framework. So everyone was super clear on how they could contribute in us to succeed.
Yeah, that's good. So I guess you were able to leverage that previous experience to bring change and improvement into where you found yourself in the next role. Yes. It sounded like too that I guess when a company is scaling from the numbers you talked about, I'm assuming they probably had the actual requirement to go, oh, we actually need to, have more compliance, more obligations as a company as we're growing and that kind of thing. So it sounded like you were kind of right there at the right time to bring that experience and help them do that.
Yeah, 100%. And it was growing and it was flushed. It was profitable. So it makes it easier to be able to put a business case forward on, okay, as we scale, this is how do we best support that scaling? So nothing holds anyone back. And in those type of environments, in a large organization where there's profits and it's easier to get the resourcing, yes, you can build out your teams. You can implement newer technology to support and increase productivity. There's all those things that we were able to do during that time. Not always as easy at a startup or a scale-up. And it's being able to prioritize and at least try and funnel key priorities and procedures that can help the team and get everyone the information they need. But you can't always solve that problem with more resources.
Yeah, you almost have to be more creative and do things differently when you don't have those resources, right? Mm-hmm. So sometimes it can actually be a bit of a blessing in disguise in some ways, because you have sometimes you have less resources, less money, but then you got to get creative. You've got to do things better, or you've got to, you can't just throw money at the problem, right? I want to go back for a second and just, if someone's listening, right, and they are in consulting at the moment, they are in a big four, they're doing the crazy hours, I'm pretty sure it will still be the same as what it was when I was recruiting in there. What advice would you give them, say they're earlier in their career and they maybe feel a bit stuck? What advice would you give them to craft, I guess, a career direction and how they know the right move to make? Because it's a big move leaving Big Four, right? It's huge organization, awesome training. When someone leaves, it's a really big decision. What advice would you give someone specifically for that?
I think I would should suggest that they consider how they best like to work. Is it how much support around you? Do you want to be the one in the detail and being able to drive the project? How do you best work and what are your key preferences? Because at different levels, different roles, it can have a significant or it plays out differently for everybody. But in the startup world, you do have to jump in, roll your sleeves up, be resourceful. It's not going to be there available for you. You've got to find the information, build the information, work with different people around the organization to make it happen. And it's wild and it's exciting. And I get a lot of energy from that because I love working with different people across the organization. But we're all built differently. And I love change, and not for the sake of change, but I love continuous improvement. And that was another big thing, particularly at PwC and REA. It was very common in terms of, okay, how do you continue to improve, both personally, your team, and sort of flows throughout. And it's really having them reflect on, okay, how do I feel about those different dimensions, and then if I'm comfortable with that, then okay, sure, go ahead and explore the amazing startup world.
It's really good advice. I think a lot of people, when they're in that situation, they sometimes leave based on maybe being stressed or having heaps of work on, and they think leaving is going to fix that, but they haven't really prosecuted what they want to do next. It's more like they want to leave that situation. And it's amazing how many people don't actually sit down and think about, okay, what's the next step after that? What am I going to learn here? Am I going to get leveled up? Am I going to learn things I'm not going to learn where I am now? Or do I just keep grinding for a bit longer until the right thing comes up, right?
Yeah. I used to have a little quote on a sticky note, but I think it just withered away. But yeah, what is it? Something along the lines of, is what I'm doing today, how is that going to help me in the future? And yeah, what learning experience, how will they develop? What are they doing now that helps them develop? And, someone's trajectory doesn't mean that they're just going up the whole time. You can move across. I've moved across because I knew I wanted to make that pivotal change. And I was okay with then reporting to a peer because I knew it was going to transform my career pathway. So back to your point, Kris, yes, have a think about what is it that is truly driving you and what you want to get out of it in the future, rather than sort of just the move for move's sake. Yeah.
Yeah, and you make the decision based on those reasons or values, right? So obviously money and these different things are important, but if you have a lens of what am I going to level up in, where do I go next after this, like what does that look like, coupled with the financial side of it, then you tend to make much better decisions. Whereas if you look at a title in a company and you make the decision on that, I've seen it go wrong so many times because they haven't actually thought about it.
100%. And you touched on values. And again, I've been so fortunate to be part of organizations with really strong values. And they were drummed into us at PwC. REA was all about living by their values. And then as I continued through the startups that I was at, it was everything you do is aligned to the values, and the cultural aspect, the dynamics from the top down, from the board, and then it flows through the organization. The values and the culture is super important, and I tend to over-index on that when I'm looking at roles.
How do you know if you are assessing that from the outside? How do you know whether they're actually living by the values or whether they're just like, stick them on the wall and no one looks at them again?
Yeah. I do ask a lot of questions around this one, Dan, and you almost corroborate via lots of different conversations with different people at all levels. In my role, my current role, I ask for extra meetings, just so I could really get that sense of how do they live by their values. And I've never seen any other organization do it as well as Tribe does. And I don't know, is it a bit of luck? And do I just happen to ask enough questions? I don't think you truly know, but you can only ask within your ecosystem and ask as many questions as you can from different people when going through the process. But I wasn't shy to ask for more meetings.
What's the best question someone should ask, do you think, to assess it?
Well, you've put me on the spot there. And if I put it in tribes, if I reflect on tribe,
yeah,
it's how do we live and breathe? Like, how do we genuinely acknowledge, reward, work within our values, and we genuinely just celebrate everyone and anyone. Like, I love it when it's when peers nominate each other, and so how do organizations bring that to life? And I see that done so well at Tribe, and I think it's really asking about that. How do people? Are you assessed against your values? Because I've always been assessed against values. How do you celebrate? Do you nominate? How do you really build that into everything that you do within the organization?
Is that kind of like a mirror of, I always think about culture and leadership in the terms of if something happens, a situation happens, or certain behaviors happen, as a leader, you're sort of, you form culture by encouraging the behaviors you want to see and addressing behaviors you don't want to see. And I've found that, like, a bit of a pattern where if you don't go and deal with things that are outside of the values that you want to be able to follow as a team or as a group, then that becomes like an accepted standard where people go, oh, cool, the leader is like, it's not you're not encouraging it, but just by allowing it to happen and not addressing it, it kind of creates this culture kind of gets formed, I guess, which might diverge from what you actually intend.
Yeah, at the moment, our CEO is magnificent at always bringing it back to our core values. When we're talking about strategy, when we're talking about, how we collaborate and work together, you're right. Every organization has this underlying culture. We do always try to reframe back to the core values, but inevitably, I think things, whether it's within a team, within a region, things may just, not be quite centered with and aligned with the rest of the organization. And it's hard, isn't it? In all organizations, every different team has a different culture, or there's a history, a narrative that we may not well be aware of, and it's something that's legacy, and it just sort of continues on.
I think when you're in interview, you can do exactly what the interviewer does as the interviewee. So you can ask for examples, right? So rather than asking the question like, what are your core values? You can see them on the website. It's like, give me an example of what that looks like, practically speaking. Who is your most improved staff member, and what have you done to help improve them? Or like, what impact have you had on your sales team or your customer success team? Or you want clear examples, because then people go into their default position and talk about the example, but it's the underlying value that supports that example, right? As opposed to asking for it clearly. I mean, I've worked with a lot of companies, and I've genuinely never seen anyone talk about the way that they do business and their values like Jules did, like in his videos. And when you see him talk, like, you can tell that that's authentic. And then when you talk to other people who have dealt with him at all different levels, they all say the same thing. There's a consistency about it.
Oh, like I said, how you've articulated it perfectly, Kris. It's not about having them relay those values, but those examples of how they consistently live them and demonstrate them throughout the organisation is key. And Jules, he has set that tone from day one, and he's passionate about it. Yeah.
Even when he says, like, I didn't know, what was it? I didn't know much about tech. I didn't know much about digital marketing. So I started at a technology digital marketing company. You're like, not a lot of
authenticity and vulnerability, but it's the courage. And that's why I love the tech tech industry and startups, because these people have the courage to take their idea and make it happen. I'm not necessarily many years in professional services and what have you, and in finance, the ideas component for me, I feel like has dwindled somewhat, and I'm there to then enable and make that dream come alive. see it come to fruition. And that's what I love. And that's why I made that transition, because I felt that in the early days at a big corporate, but was there through that enormous growth and saw that transformation, which was an amazing experience. But then I yearn to be part of and make someone's dream a reality, but have that impact and as a team work together to achieve that.
This is something that stood out to me about you the first time I met you, is like a lot of people talk about, I want to have impact, and you touched on it earlier, but you actually want to make the business, the team, whatever it is you touch better, even if you're not there. So, and I don't think a lot of people think like that. It's like, how do I do better whilst I'm there? But I think you're always thinking about, how do I actually do it so someone can then come on and do it and improve it? Or I think that's quite rare. Like, I don't see that a lot from people. Was that something you learned, or has that always been part of your DNA when it comes to your career and your work?
A little bit of both, but from day one at a professional services firm, that continuous improvement is drummed into you, and you become, it's that growth mindset. This is not to be harsh. This is constructive to make you better. And input from others, learning from those around you, trying new things is all going to help you grow. And I've also experienced how the beauty of having a high-performing team, and when you all come together, because you can't be the person that has all the answers, but when you come together, it's such a powerful force, and you can make it's just amazing what you can achieve together. And I think that's what I take with me. And I love to try and understand how people think, or what do they mean by that? How did they come up with that idea? So I am a very curious person. I was that annoying child that always asked why growing up and drove my parents insane. And I think I've continued that throughout. Like, how do we make it better? Maybe I don't know from here. So where's the input that we can make this better for everyone? So I have always been a team player. So I think that's innate in me, and I get a lot of energy from working with people. But I've also learned that, it took me a while, that people aren't like me in that respect. And so when I ask a team member, should we do this one together? Come sit with me and let's work through it. And they don't like that. They want to be able to go away and do it themselves and then come back. Whereas I'm really comfortable, like, let's scratch our heads at the same time and work it out together. But everyone has a different working style.
There can be some fear around that, right? Because maybe they don't know why someone wants to work with them, or they feel like maybe they're not doing as good a job. But I feel like if the way you approach it, they wouldn't feel like that, because they already feel like it's a team thing from the start, right? If the culture wasn't set from the beginning, then you have a problem when you start then doing things like that, because it's like, well, that's not how we do it. So why am I being singled out, or why is there different treatment on this particular thing? But if it's in the fabric of the company and everyone is collaborative by nature, then it should, in theory, not be an issue when you kind of do that, right?
Yeah, and I've had both experiences where some very much welcome it, whereas I've had to learn to just go, no, that's not for them. So I'll just wait for it and look at it at the end. Mm-hmm. You think, in theory, you think it should work, but people still have their work style preferences, and sometimes your intent with that doesn't always land, regardless of how you've done it in the past or how things work within the team. But just being a lot more aware of how different people like to work. I just ask now. What is your preference in how we achieve this together? And so I know exactly. They've told me. Yeah. I've heard it, and then I action it accordingly.
It's very simple, but super effective. Like, why not think about that? Just ask the person.
Ask them. I don't know. All right. Just don't make me read between the lines. Just tell me what you need right now. Okay.
I love that. What do you think makes a truly great leader? And what advice would you give people who don't have that experience? They're maybe in a team just now, but they haven't been a leader. What advice would you give them to build the armor, build the skill set that they need to go into that leadership role?
Yeah, there's so many different factors. And if I reflect on some of the great leaders that I've worked for, one person had said to me, listen to what they're not saying. What is it that they're trying to articulate, but maybe they're unable to, or there's different there's cultural differences in the way that they articulate it. So what are they not saying? What did they say, but what did they not say? So a deeper listening. Other leaders where they've had confidence but open to ideas and show their vulnerabilities to some extent where they don't have all the answers and so working across the team. And those that want to develop and coach those around them. So I had an excellent CFO that I reported to that just said, he'd say to me, we're about to enter into our first conversation for debt. Why don't you come and listen in? Or, hey, there's an M&A project over here. Would you like to be part of it? My problem is I say yes to everything. And I still haven't learnt that many years on. But I do say yes because I want to learn. I want to experience it. I want to work with different people. It really is this yearning for knowledge and experiences. So I've got to learn to say no, but it's that they took me under their wing or they just trusted me and they knew that, hey, I had no idea, but they trusted that I would find my way. And so it's that believe in your team members and give them the opportunities and let them have the voice. Stepping into leadership is a bigger transition than they prepare you for. You're just sort of flung into it. Oh, go lead an audit team. Oh, go lead a group reporting team. Go lead this, that. And again, it wasn't until I was in the PwC Foundation where I truly learnt empathetic leadership. And that's me inside, but I wasn't bringing that to work. And it really shifted in the way I tried to understand people, show them my vulnerabilities, and find the best way we could all work together to become a high-performing team. And then I took that with me over to the UK. I had experienced that in the UK in terms of a high-performing team, and we all had our very different capabilities and skill sets, but it fit this. All the pieces of the puzzle came together in this magnificent, I've never experienced such a team as I had there. And so I took that with me into the PwC Foundation, but then really led with more empathy there and has sort of set me, when I get busy though, and we're all the same, sometimes you go back to doing mode. But that really, there's a lot more to the journey of becoming a leader than just a title and having this position. And it's not about power. It's how do you bring the best out of everyone and give them the opportunities. And so understand where they're heading and what they want from their career pathway as well.
Yeah, so learning that, right? So before you had that approach, when you saw that, did that then just become, right, that's how I want to do it moving forward? Was it felt better? Was it a better result? Like, what was it that said, right, this is the type of leader? The reason I ask you is most of the people we've spoke to so far on the show, Teresa being an example, Alana being another example, it's like they thought they were being a certain way, they didn't realise. But then when they understood being a bit more vulnerable, being a little bit more yourself at work, it just kind of transformed how they did things. Were you similar?
Yes, and is it with maturity that you just become more aware, and everyone doesn't think like you, so your intention isn't always how it's perceived, and you know, receiving some feedback on that. But finding the joy in how to all work together and truly understanding, understanding each other, it did make me it made me change. It just felt more natural as well. And I think the early years in a professional service firm, I was very deliver at all costs, because I was getting that pressure and I just passed it on. And no one liked that. I didn't like it. Would go home miserable from the pressure you're getting, and then to push that down. And, you know, I need a bit of laughter in the workforce. I need a little get to know each other, have a bit of a chat. And again, it's not for everyone. But I find that super important, that people can be themselves and bring themselves to work and feel comfortable. Yeah, it's tough. But I just know that I want to be more natural in how I am. And, you know, and then I've been told, hey, don't open up the kimono completely. Like, you got to find some balance.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think in the early years, I think people have a very different view of leadership. And that's why if people think, oh, yeah, I'm a leader, I get to dictate everything and it's a position of power, by no means is that what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes like I don't know the answer. Sorry, Dan, go ahead.
No, I think like you mentioned before, when you were put into a new role and you had the natural disasters you mentioned and you were brand new, and do you think do people have to go through tough situations like that to learn some of these lessons around leadership, like how to actually get out of themselves? And you know, like I would imagine it's no one really wants to go through fire. I suppose it's very uncomfortable. But would you say that's kind of a necessary part? Maybe that's part of being more mature, like you mentioned, do you think?
I definitely learn with a bit of baptism of fire, but yeah, I do think they need to go through that and learn within different teams, different experiences, because every time it's different. There's many textbooks out there, but applying it, I feel that you do need that experience behind you. And it's not going to be perfect, but again, trying to listen to those around you, observe, be aware. Yeah, but for me, going through those experiences and seeing the fundamental change in the way people grow in front of you, because you just be a bit more yourself or your natural self and you bring that to work. That for me, that transformed me. Just to see someone who was even frightened to speak up, to at the end, I prepped them for a presentation, you know, with the returning manager and the partner, went through her achievements for the year, and different person. And for me, that joy in seeing someone's growth has stuck with me the most.
Do you think that as a leader, when you get to more senior levels with more responsibilities and that kind of thing, how do you look at success? Like, how do you look at what ingredients you need for success in the role? And I'm wondering how much emphasis you would put on the people in your team or the people around you, and help, like what you mentioned about growing them, seeing them like grow and achieve these things. But do you consider that like a core prerequisite or a core requisite to go, this is like part of the formula that needs to be in place to actually have your division succeed or your area succeed?
Yeah, 100%. And I'd put a lot of emphasis and weighting on the people, because you can make the most of what you've got in terms of technology and what have you. But if you have the right mindset, the right team players, you can all come together and make wonderful things happen. And I look at that when I first joined my first startup. And I walked into a very bored finance team that were just doing the monthly reporting. And I was very fortunate, because it doesn't always work out like this, that I'm like, okay, what I asked the finance manager at the time, well, where do you see yourself in the next couple of years? What does bring you joy, and what do you want to get out of work? And they said, I want to be a commercial analyst. And I'm like, brilliant. There's a commercial analyst here. So let's do things together. And you can hear that again. Let's do things together. Learning. It's a growth journey. But they embraced it. They were like, sure. How do I do it? And I'm like, well, let's work it out. We'll find a way, and let's build commercial business partnering into this small startup, because let Xero do the number crunching for us in terms of the basics, but what insights can we draw from that? And Dan, back to your question, you need the right people that are willing to jump in and give it a go. And I heard what they wanted to do. So I said, fine, let's try and carve your role out to be like that. And they've gone on to be a commercial analyst at a much larger organization. And I discovered a mastermind. She could look at a spreadsheet from behind someone's shoulder and pick something out, and I was still trying to and everyone would be like, And in the end, we went from the finance team. No one really worked with the finance team. They just expected them to pay the bills and payroll, to everyone wanting to partner with finance because of this person. So that's why I come back to the power of the team and having the right mix of different capabilities and people and skill sets within the team to complement each other and really bring it to life.
The most striking thing to that, though, and I've done it for a long time, is the amount of people who are in that situation, like your finance analyst that became the commercial analyst, but don't get that opportunity. They don't get that opportunity to do it, so they end up having to leave the organisation, or they might not actually do the opportunity at all. There's so much, like, what would you call it, uncovered talent in people, because they don't have the right people working with them and maybe giving them the opportunity. I know you've got to go take it, but if you don't create an opportunity for them to tell you that in the first place, they just continue doing their role, and then maybe a commercial analyst role comes up elsewhere. Maybe someone else taps them in the shoulder, right? So I think a lot of people look at it as if I grow the skills in my team and I get them to do other stuff, they might end up leaving. And my answer to that is they'll leave anyway. Like, it's kind of, you're going to lose them if you don't actually develop and level them up.
Great point. But I've also experienced the opposite, where they tell me that's what they want. So then I try and change the role to support them through that. But it almost becomes too much stepping outside the comfort zone. And so I've lost them through that as well. And so I'm like, okay, fine. If you tell me, I'm going to try and make it happen. But maybe people don't want it to happen at that speed or that timeline. That I don't know. That I can only, hey, you mentioned this. Let's lean into this more. How do we make more time for it? How are you going with it? And but that can also, I've seen that work the other way as well. So I've seen beautiful growth and development, and I've seen people go, oh, that's too far. Maybe I didn't want that in my comfort zone. It's outside my comfort zone.
It's the classic thinking you want something but having no idea what you actually want.
Yeah, but it's being okay with exploring it. We all make mistakes, right? And that's okay. So give it a try. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? We're going to fix it together. And, that was some great advice in from one of your earlier questions. One of my, so perfectionism ran through me very, very deep for many years in professional services. And so it was Owen at REA who would say, Jack, stop trying to package it all up with a beautiful bow on top on a silver platter, and actually just your first, 20% of effort is you're probably 80% there. So let me see it so I can give you some input. And so that really did form. It's okay. And, sometimes I still do it when I'm learning and I'm like, no, got to let go. And that's where I've now come to embrace more and more input early on. And it's okay. Hey, I've gone down this path, but someone might say, hey, see what you've done there. Why don't we try this as well? And you're like, oh, wow, what a magnificent product in the end. So it's that input together that can make things better. And it was something that I had to be reminded of very early on.
Dan's got a great quote for this. Dan, do you want to hit us with it?
Do I?
Yes.
What's the quote?
You gave it to me a little while back. It was,
yes.
If you can go, mate. It's your quote.
Is it, what is it? Is perfection being the enemy of good?
Well, that's one of them. The other one is, if you're not embarrassed by it, you shipped it too late.
Yes.
Which was
definitely
incredible.
That's a good one.
It was incredible. When he said it to me, I was like, right, okay, I should actually be embarrassed by some of the stuff that I'm putting out.
Dan, I was sitting on something for a couple of weeks. I just had to finesse one little thing. And I should have just bloody shipped it off earlier. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Okay. I love that one. I'm going to add that one. Yep.
It is amazing. It must be like, I see a lot of people coming from Big Four, coming from bigger organizations, and they go into startups and they absolutely fall apart at the seams. They just can't deal with it because they don't realize that the thing that someone else did, they now have to do. Like, there's about 100 different things that they have to do that they just didn't realize. They just didn't actually analyze who does the things that they do. What has surprised you the most about working in startups?
So the pleasant and the wonderful surprises is amazing talent. Some of the smartest people I've worked with and passionate have been from startups. And I feed off that. It brings me a lot of fulfillment and joy to be part of that. And so worked with some incredible people. What surprised me from a maybe more, I didn't realize it so much. I think I've been very fortunate with, coming through the professional services, up through the ranks there into larger organizations and, bounced in and out of them in the audit world as well, but then being part of them. And not everyone has that experience. And so for me, it was a reminder to provide context as to why I was positioning something in the way or doing something or going about something, because I think I just assumed everyone knew that's how you do it. But no, everyone's had a very different experience. And people might have an engineering background. So you've got to be able to present something that an engineer. And then you've got people from a more creative background that are like, do not get into the details with me. And you've got to be able to balance that. And I think what surprised me was, okay, I need to remember we all come from a different background. I need to position this differently. So know your audience. Lack of processes. And again, that was just because I came from a cult and that was drummed into me, or tongue in cheek. Loved my tongue. No. Can we rewind that? No. No. So processes in larger organizations, they're tight, and it's something that you have to build. And you don't have the resources, whether it's funds or people, to be able to support you in the way you used to. And I just think that takes a little bit of getting used to at first. But the passion, the talent. The only other thing, actually, it can be challenging to hire good talent. But when you find them, it's extraordinary. But, yeah, it's just, being able to compete for good talent and high caliber against large organizations when you're trying to offer share options and, you're not going to be able to pay at the top of the tier, it can be challenging. So talent in both ways.
You just have to go a lot deeper in the process. You have to know people. I personally think you have to know them more. You have to understand their motivations. You have to really get to know them properly to know that they're going to work in that type of environment. Because if you don't, if it's just face value and you take them from a really cool big tech company and you put them into a startup, it could be extremely difficult for them if you've not actually understood those motivations underneath, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's why they need to reflect on, well, how do they best work? In what environment is that? Yeah.
Totally. What would you say is the biggest misconception that people have about what a CFO does?
The misconception. Payroll.
Wait a minute. You don't pay your staff.
Not me personally.
Yeah.
The team and the programs do.
Thank you,
but
Zero.
I don't have all the answers when it comes to payroll questions. Again, if I reflect back, startups in their early stages, and they were very frank with me, during an interview process. It was, we don't need a CFO, but the board has told us we need one. We're at that stage where we need one. We've raised, a significant amount of money, and we want to continue to expand and grow. So they've asked us to bring that in there, but can you just continue to pay the bills? I'm like, I'm not here to pay your bills. We have a team, a wonderful team that does that. I'm here to provide insights to help drive strategic decision-making. And I will extract any type of intel or information that I can from those numbers and report them in a different way so we can make the right decisions to enable that growth. And you come across a lot of different characters, and one was like, just don't bother me with it. But I came to be, I just transformed with the help of an amazing team, transform people's perceptions of finance and how they interact, and that they are truly an enabler of a business, not it's not just that we're always there saying no because we don't have enough budget. But we are there to partner with them and draw insights so they can make better decisions within their own department as well.
I would. I was itching to actually ask, relating to this previously, when you talked about enabling a business and you work with people who are ideas people, which is quite common probably in startups. A lot of people who go to startups are like ideas people. I find, I would imagine if you told me the bad news of like, Dan, you don't have enough budget for this, then I'm sure you're a very nice person, so I think I would feel okay with it. I think sometimes when I say from a technical side, we don't have the capability to actually achieve this, maybe I say it in a kind of a grumpy way, and it kind of, I think,
yes,
I don't know if anyone enjoys. I think what you explained about being able to enable a business to succeed and go after those ideas and achieve big things, and that's exciting for everyone. But how do you balance that with the reality check of sometimes, you're bringing constraints where it's like, well, actually, or is that like a helpful thing to actually achieve the ideas? What do you think?
Particularly in my previous role, I would spend a lot of time with, head of marketing, head of product, and all different departments, truly understanding what was on their roadmap or what were they trying to achieve and how do we best allocate those resources. And it's like, okay, if we got more money, then we would add this. So trying to see it from your cup is half full as opposed to empty. So what can we do with this? And tell me, what would you need to make XYZ happen? So in your situation, Dan, I'd say, okay, so in order to achieve, the priority 10, 11, and 12 on your roadmap, how much would that be? So I know if funds did come to fruition, or however it works out, that I would know how much to allocate to your department because it would make that happen. Or we can't achieve this without then funding in, something else. So that would help promote it or what have you. So it's all well and good building something, but then if we don't have money to promote it. So I would seek to understand all components and the impact on, okay, if we were to have this budget, what does it mean to roadmap? And it's one I've had with many different CTOs throughout my career. What impact does it have? So what won't we deliver? And what could happen if you had this amount or that amount? So I try to understand exactly what their priorities are and what can we make work in the envelope that we have. And it doesn't matter how big and profitable a company is, we all have an envelope by which we work within. And how does that align to your company goals as well? Because if I then turn around and go, sorry, you've got no budget for that. And they're like, well, we're not going to make any money from that product then if you're not going to invest in it. So I really need to understand what are the strategic goals and how are we allocating resources, again, whether that be cash for people, technology, mainly people, and then we can make the decisions together from there. I've also had situations where I've led a data and analytics team where rather than I made the decision, I would bring product managers from different revenue streams to the agile wall and have them work through the priorities together. So if it gets to a point where there's competing strategies and I'm looking at it going, gosh, we need to do it all. How am I going to fit this in within the envelope? That's when you bring everyone together and you work through it. Okay, we've got this amount. We've got these 4 strategic goals. How do we make it work within each of these buckets? And which one do we prioritize first and work through it that way?
Yeah, I think that kind of resonates with what you've been saying about your leadership style as well. And because I think what I've seen in some situations where you have a group of experts and you have competing priorities and, people are kind of going off in different directions because they have autonomy and ownership over a specific area. So they're like, cool, well, to achieve this is what I'm going to do. This is what I need. This is what I'm planning. But when you bring them together, I've seen when you bring talented people together, you kind of go, look, we have this challenge. We need to achieve this within this constraint. And I find talented people maybe, they tend to rise up and go, okay, they kind of work it out together amongst them. Like, oh, cool, so you need that and I need this and maybe I can change this, and they can figure out where the compromises should be. I don't know. I've heard some people say to me, you can't do that because people don't know what they're doing or whatever. But I kind of look at it and think I'd prefer that as a leadership style, and therefore I try to hire people, work with people who are capable of doing that.
Yeah.
And I find that seems to be an empowering way, I guess, to get to a great outcome, but it's one that other people have bought into and actually made, they've been a part of the decision-making process. Is that kind of how you see it as well?
Yeah, I think that's critical, that they feel that they are part of that decision-making process and they have a voice in it, and they may not get the result that they were hoping for, but at least there was an opportunity to at least object or, put their case forward as to why that was important. There's situations where I just have to go, oh, my goodness, there's nowhere else. I have to make this budget cut. But when you're working with a lot of stakeholders, as a CFO, you can't just walk in there and go, no. There needs to be context. You need to be able to hear their business case and understand how it fits within the larger landscape and have a conversation about it. I think the worst thing you can do as a CFO is just always say no, or you say not right now.
Yeah,
I've got that on the list for later as well, or yep, as soon as funding comes through, or what have you. And it's actually not leading them on, because I actually genuinely mean it at that point in time. And at the beginning of the year, when I work through a budget, what I try to do, and again, it depends on the circumstances of each company, is understand, well, what do you really need and what do you want? And someone said to me once, I've never, ever been asked that. It's like, what do you mean you haven't been asked what you need to achieve? Because you can just only give it to me and then we have to fit it all within the larger envelope. But let me know what you're trying to achieve. So, because how can I set a budget if I don't know? But again, practically speaking, it doesn't always work out perfectly like that. But I remember feeling quite emotional when someone said that to me, because I was like, what? No one's stopped to ask you what you need? I think it's important that they do have a voice.
There's also like a fundamental difference with what you're saying around like, no, we can't do that, or how can we do that? Like asking someone how and getting people together, even if it's not the thing that they want, if they feel part of it overall, they'll often promote someone else's idea if they actually feel like they're part of it. If there's like a competition element, then obviously not, right? Because it's then survival of the fittest. I think it goes back again to like culture and creating that environment to kind of, you've got a North Star or whatever. This is what we want to do. We're all doing it together, and everyone come up with the ideas, and then we can ask how can we implement them, as opposed to, no, we can't do that because of this reason. You're coming at it from a negative standpoint, right? And people are defensive at that point.
And they bypass you. So if you're going to be someone that always says no, they're not going to bring you in the tent and have a conversation. They're just going to go elsewhere to try and make it happen. So having open ears to all of that is super important.
So to pivot to a different topic, tell us a little bit about Tribe, and what are you guys working on at the moment? What are you excited about at Tribe?
So Tribe, the power of content at scale. And, we've gone through 9 years of transformation, where we used to be almost like a self-serve technology platform where brands would be able to access our tech and then work through and select creators that would predominantly be influencers. So, they would post about the product on Instagram. But now it's content at scale, where we have these large campaigns, and we work with amazing customers, large enterprise across the globe, and they license the content. And it's not just from influencers, all sorts of creators. And so really is the power of that content at scale, where, larger organizations or creative agencies don't have the ability or for the speed that we do, and the ability to attract some great creators as well. The most exciting thing, though, and what we're really seeing starting to gain momentum throughout the industry, is harnessing the power of your employees as creators. And why not have the people that know your product better than anyone else, who live and breathe your organization, why not have them be the ones that create content to be able to promote it? So then you license that content. Again, it's all about whether it's videos or, just that UGC, that a brand can then go on and use that content for whatever means they need. But really being able to harness that power of your employees is truly exciting. We've seen companies do it in different ways. So if you think of, in Australia, Bunnings using their employees for TV commercials, I think Marks & Spencer does it in the UK. So different companies, we've got BWS and Big W utilising our tech and people in being able to harness the power of their employees as creators. And so they create content that they can then go on to use. That is truly exciting and something, the way of the future in terms of creative marketing. And it's super... I'm just really proud to see Tribe leading with this product. So our unlocked product being really first to market in driving that at scale, just really driving that as a core strategy this year as well.
It's incredible to see the democratization of this over the last number of years, and the sort of demise or slow demise of mainstream media, and how, if you look at a lot of these social channels and organic channels and content, it is absolutely unbelievable how effective it is versus you have a very small slot of time. You have to get everything in. It's got to meet all these different standards. It costs a fortune. It's slow to release. It's difficult to get to market. Whereas someone just picking up their mobile phone with a product and telling a genuine story and getting that out at scale is unbelievable.
And if they're ones that are within the organisation that authentically and genuinely love the product, then that really comes through, and that's where we find there's greater impact and return on investment from that content, because people are attracted to that authenticity.
You can just feel it, right? It's hard to work out why, but it's just a feeling, isn't it? It's an emotion. It's something that's oh, that's genuine. That's not a paid review that someone's just...
Yes, it's the paid review. When you've got your A-grade celebrities, they know that they've been paid for it. But then you've got these people that, love the product and have different ideas as to how to use it, eat it, wear it, whatever it may well be, and can bring that to life in such creative ways. So there is an enormous power in that.
I love it. So final question for me, Jack. Anyone listening, you guys are hiring. Why would they want to come and work with Tribe?
Well, we've spoken a lot about the vibrant culture, and we definitely live and breathe our values, but it's really exciting. As I mentioned, we're paving the way when it comes to employees as creators and in creative marketing, and we have for 9 years been incredibly innovative, and we're innovative, we're passionate, we're energetic. There is a lot of excitement as to where creative marketing will continue to go. It continues to grow enormously, as you mentioned, Kris, and we are only at the tip of the iceberg right now, and there's so much more that to be achieved. And we're across Australia, the US, the UK, so there's a lot of opportunity there. And we have exciting large brands that we work with and social platform partners as well. And so the experience at Tribe and who you get to work with is, from a customer base, huge development opportunity there too. So very exciting. And our tech is definitely leading the charge. And again, as we continue to harness the power of and the impact of creators, we've got so much more we can do.
Love it. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. It's been awesome having you on the show.
Thank you, Kris and Dan. Wonderful speaking with you today.
It's been great. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.